I want to say a word of thanks this morning to all of you here on the Grafton Democratic Town Committee. One of the most important things about city and town committees, and my first elected success at 25 years old, was to be elected chairman of the Springfield Democratic City Committee. You give meaning to elections in between elections. You're the infrastructure of the Democratic Party. And you've assembled so faithfully here year after year in an area, let's be candid, that has become a bit more difficult for all of us that have D next to our name. You've got a terrific congressman in Jim McGovern. His kindness and his decency and his friendship to me have been extraordinary, and I'm grateful for the introduction that he offered today. Before I get to just a couple of thoughts and ideas, I also want to tell you, if you really want to make a difference, let's send Elizabeth Warren to the United States Senate. The most stubborn part of politics is arithmetic. And we can make up a lot of other things, and you can spin up facts, and you can alter some arguments, but one thing you can't get past is that Senate in January is going to be in the vicinity of 51-49, 52-48. And the idea in this state that we wouldn't have a Democratic senator is ridiculous. There is no reason not to have her in the Senate, and I'm going to tell you something. She's been a great candidate. I've watched her as we've moved along, and she's on the right side of the issues. These arguments are never about being on the inside or the outside. It's about being on the right side of the issues, and that's where she is. And you know, when I first started in politics, we, as members of the Democratic Party, we always stood with the working man and the working woman. A decent wage, safety on the job, concerns about the environment. But we stood for the notion of opportunity, and have never forgotten our common lineage or heritage of what happened at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We transformed history, and these things have all changed because of people like you who inspired those great moments. But one of the things that disturbs me most about the current argument in Washington is this. Pat Moynihan, who was a friend of mine, he used to always say, we're all entitled to our own set of opinions. What we're not entitled to is our own set of facts. I'm just going to take you back just for a couple of seconds here. January 19th, 2001. Bill Clinton says goodbye. A $5.7 trillion surplus is staring at America. 22 million jobs had been created. The unemployment rate was 4%. We had quarters of economic growth that were exceeded 7%. And then the argument becomes, 8 years later, that this is Barack Obama's fault? When you consider that we cut taxes by $2.3 trillion, not with the help of Jim McGovern and I can tell you that, and I got up on the floor as Jim did, and we spoke against those tax cuts. $2.3 trillion of tax cuts, $1.3 trillion in 2001 and $1 trillion more in 2003, and then invaded two sovereign nations. I want to say this about, you're about to be congressman, and your current congressman, there weren't many of us that stood up and spoke against the war in Iraq and voted against it, but Jim McGovern and I were two of them. When you hear this argument today that the budget deficits, where all the money for Iraq and all the money for the tax cuts, borrowed money. That's a fact, that's not an opinion. All borrowed money. But when you hear this argument today that is now being used by Paul Ryan and others, they blame Social Security for this? Social Security has nothing to do with these budget deficits. The average Social Security benefit is $14,000 a year. And you know what the great thing about Social Security, and my God, as Democrats, we ought to be able to rally to the cause of Social Security. It's one of our great legacies, from Roosevelt to the Medicare amendment that Johnson offered. But when you hear that argument on Social Security, always remember this. You can outlive an annuity. You can't outlive Social Security. How many of you in this room have college-age children? Do you know what's important about Social Security and Medicare? You could never hope to care for an ailing parent if you were simultaneously trying to send those kids to college. That's the issue that Social Security and Medicare provide for all of us. It gives us a sense of community. In our youth, we all pull the wagon because in our aged years, we might have to sit in the wagon. And to those who get a little bit snarky about Social Security and Medicare, I always say this to them. Think of it this way. The reason mom and dad are not living in your attic is because of Social Security and Medicare. Just on a personal note, because I'm so grateful, and I never missed this event, I don't think, in all of the years that I've represented you, but we had some great success here too. And Charlie and that newspaper, they were great supporters of mine here. I never drove by without stopping in to say hello and to curry a little bit of favor with that editorial page. That was always very supportive. But we did good work here, Jim and I, Wyman Gordon. One of the legacies for me will always be that Blackstone Corridor Historic Project. I remember with the Musinskis here fighting that battle in Webster against that decision, that landfill that they were going to try to place next to it. And I always vowed I would never negotiate another land use issue once I got to Congress. And of course you dragged me in on the vet school here at Tufts. And what a great success story that's been. And we were year after year able to put money into that vet school. And by the way, in the earmarking process, it was done. And who wouldn't want Tufts to be associated with their community across this state? So I thank you. I'm on my way to West Springfield and on my way to Chicopee later on today. But so many of you have been so kind, and I want to tell you this. No matter what I did, Diane Sachs would have defended me through the second axe murder. What a friend. Great friend. And no matter what I asked her to do here, she did for me over all of these years. So put your hands together for yourselves. You've been great friends to me. Thank you.